Well, hello there, you lovely people. Jules here for WhatCulture.com with another ray of sunshine for you grotty snotlings. This time, looking at insane video game details that were quite pointless but will absolutely melt your brain with how much work has gone into them. Now, I've actually covered this point before, but this time I'm back and I'm not alone, for I've roped in super lad and all-round fact hunter Larry Bundy Jr. to help sniff out the secrets. That's right, it's a collaboration list, so sound the friendship horn. So with this in mind, I'm Jules, your Southwest Savage, and these are 10 more pointless video game details that will blow your mind. Crytek have always been known for their cutting-edge technology, something which they embraced to comedic lengths when debuting their latest engine alongside CRYSIS 3. By that I mean that when the team detailed which new features will be getting the old spit and polish, listed amongst them was Toad Tessellation. Now before you think that this is a sex act, which it totally is by the way, this is just the name they gave to the process of making the most realistic looking amphibians in gaming. Ooh, I hear no one coo. But you know what? To their credit, they pulled it off and you can see all these water wasters just pissing about in high res. They provide nothing to the game except for a pretty distraction and yet another reason to buy a fire extinguisher for your graphics card.
While the long-in-development Escape from Tarkov isn't the biggest game around, it has gained a following for being an impressive loot-gathering sim. Currently still in closed alpha, the shooter takes place in the fictional Tarkov in northwest Russia, tasking players with, who'd have guessed it, escaping the city in real time by scrounging the best looting gear and surviving the harsh conditions set around them. However, one of the ways the developers keep the game feeling so lifelike and realistic is basing each day's weather patterns on the conditions they're actually working in. Consequently, the forecasts where the developers are working in St. Petersburg are usually the basis for what players have to deal with when booting up the game. Spoiler alert, it's usually lots and lots of overcast and drizzle.
What makes GTA 5's sandbox so great in comparison to other open world titles is just the overwhelming dedication that Rockstar have to replicating real life. Well, real life died up to you because I'm pretty sure I couldn't get away with half the shit I do in GTA. One of the really nice touches was when it's hot and you've been running, your character would sweat through their clothes, that you would appear soaked if you went into the sea, and the injuries would appear after trips to the hospital. But the sheer point of dedication was the flip-flops. A completely throwaway moment, but one that Rockstar spent a lot of time over. These flip and or flop noises change with the character's speed and surface. It's impressive, and it's fucking mad.
Snake Eater isn't only considered one of the best Metal Gear Solid games because of its James Bond-esque narrative, but because of how many cool details Kojima managed to pack into the title. Seemingly, everything you did could help you out in some way. Poisoned but lacking any antidotes? Why, spin the screen until Snake baths and cures himself. Is your stamina constantly draining? Well, that's probably thanks to some leeches, which you can easily burn off with your cigar. However, there is one feature that helped players out throughout the title, but they probably never noticed. Long before Capcom tried and failed to implement the same feature on Resident Evil 5, Snake Eater boasted a dynamic brightness setting which mimicked real human eyesight. Depending on the situation, the character's eyes would adapt, gradually illuminating darker areas while stopping brightly lit rooms from becoming overwhelming. That's of course the biggest example, but this feature is actually present throughout the rest of the experience, subtly changing during every single scene.
Back to GTA 5 again, this time to talk less about feet and more about felines, as when you're ripping up the street in a hail of bullets, try and take a look at how the in-game cats react to your rampage. Cats are a rare animal in the GTA 5 world, but they are more than just set dressing. As if you decide to make like me and your mother and pop around in a pussy, there's my one per list, you'll see it do a little cartoon jump and then scarper. Chances are you'll never see this in action because, you know, you'll be having a shootout, but it's there.
Though Half-Life 2 gets the majority of the praise when the series is brought up, it shouldn't be overlooked at just how influential the original game was. From a technical perspective, the title was unlike anything else seen at the time, an outstanding achievement which pioneered physics-based gameplay. While all that was impressive though, it admittedly took something away from the game's crowning achievement: the best cockroach AI ever featured in a release. Those little guys not only reacted to your movements, scurrying around the floor to avoid being trampled on, but were actually programmed to react to a whole host of other stimuli, including temperature. Weirdly enough, this pursuit of realistic bug artificial intelligence was shared by quite a few devs at the time, also showing up in the likes of Metal Gear Solid 2. But no other titles reached the ridiculously pointless heights as this game.
Though it was cool to build your own army of soldiers and create a home in Mother Base over the course of Metal Gear Solid 5, it's unlikely that many people actually spent much time hanging out there when they weren't stealthing their way through enemy encampments and saving child soldiers from certain death, aka what I get up to on the weekends. But if you don't call in regularly though and jump in the shower while you're there, Big Boss will actually start to smell. It kind of makes sense actually, seeing as you're just rolling around in dust and all day. However, if you ignore it for long enough, your men will even be repulsed by the stench and even trigger a cutscene where they give you a washdown. It's completely pointless outside of a little bit of comedy immersion, but I have to admit, it's almost worth doing to see your guards salute you while holding their noses.
DICE's Battlefield games have always been far more detailed than other shooters, a pretty major feat considering just how ambitious each entry has been so far. But rather than opt to chase perfect twitchy controls, the devs instead prioritise immersion, right down to including details you would never even notice in 99.9% of situations. By far the strangest one though was the decision to have soldiers close one eye when aiming down the sights of weapons in Battlefield 1. I mean, after all, the game is entirely in first person, meaning that you only ever see your character model while choosing your class. You could argue that the detail is there for when you come up against other players, but you'd literally need to be within kissing distance to notice that they've got their eye closed. And let's face it, considering the time to kill in Battlefield 1, you'd be dead long before you got the chance.
So back in the day, Ubisoft used to get accused of pushing out broken games and creating kind of lifeless open worlds. But the publisher has actually done a great deal over the past few years to remedy all of these complaints. I mean, they still release usually pretty broken games on launch, but the worlds are much better. Watch Dogs 2 is perhaps their crowning achievement though, setting a bar for small details that make a sandbox world feel lived in. One of these will only ever be experienced firsthand by a handful of people though, because, well, not only because of its rarity, but because you have to be an absolute monster to trigger it. Sticking to real life, just about every dog in the title has an owner, and because the developers embraced player freedom, you can shoot these people, leaving their dogs helpless and alone. But here's the twist. If you follow the dog and let it chill for a while, it will reset and go back to its master's body, even lying down and whimpering beside them. God, it's f***ing heartbreaking.
From the way speedometers in cars actually move, to gaming's most lifelike dirt, there's plenty of small things to find in Uncharted 4 that continue to wow even after multiple playthroughs. By far the most impressive, and entirely pointless example of the developer's dedication to making the world of Uncharted 4 feel lived in though, comes during Chapter 11. One of the best stretches of the sequel, the level begins with Nate and Sully working their way through busy streets as people go about their daily business. At one point, passing someone painting an old faded house a new shade of blue. While the paint actually appearing on the building with each stroke is actually cool, the full extent of this scripted moment isn't revealed until a few chapters later. Returning to the area for a shootout, you can actually find the same building, which now boasts its completely new paint job in all its glory.
And there we go, those were 10 more pointless video game details that will blow your mind. Thank you so much, Larry, for joining me on this audio escapade. It's been a lovely time, hasn't it? You can follow him on Twitter over here, and you can also follow me at RetroJ0 over there to come and join in the conversation. As always, I've been Jules, you've been awesome. Let me know who you'd like me to collaborate with next, and I'll speak to you soon.